Hi all, Steph here again with a quick live Q&A about Bodymind Listening 101. So let's start with the definition of what I consider the body mind. Oftentimes people will ask me, well, what is that? And I invariably toss it right back to them and say, what do you think it is? And I've gotten everything, as I'm sure many of you have, I've gotten everything from, I don't know, sounds like too much woo-woo to me, all the way to one of the most poignant descriptions I've ever heard by someone who said, I don't know, that sounds like prayer to me. Ah, okay, okay. Connecting with a deep knowing. One of the most consistent answers I tend to hear is body mind. I don't know, sounds like you're putting everything together. Indeed, yes. Yes, that's what we're doing, putting everything together. The body mind is a reintegration of the natural state of the system. So instead of using just this much or a little bit of this much, we're using the whole system, and as the Brits say, we're motoring on all cylinders. It's what our knowing feels like and the sensations that have that knowing. There's this wonderful back and forth conversation, if you will, that if we're willing to listen, it's a great internal GPS system. Now, we all have this working knowledge of the body mind because we all know what happens when we don't listen to it and take the necessary action. We've all been in those moments that go, oh God, I knew what I should have done. I knew what the right action was, and I didn't do it. And now look at what I have to deal with. Indeed, indeed. Now, the converse of that, for me, is what I call those no-brainer moments, where we just know, right? And the simple ones we use throughout the day. Chocolate or vanilla. Chocolate, jazz or classical. Either, but more on the jazz side. What do you want for dinner? You want Italian food or Chinese food? Italian. How do you know? Well, it just feels right. I know, right? When we're coming from that deep place of knowing, there isn't a lot of back and forth. There isn't a lot of discussion or negotiation or I better or I shouldn't or I didn't or what if, blah, 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 which just allow me to touch on a quick question that came in, which was, how do I know it's the body mind? And the key piece is, because it's quiet. It's not silent. There's just, you know. Now the flip side of that is the Chattermind. Blah, 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 blah. Right? So when we hear blah, 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 that's the Chattermind, not the body mind. Right? Chattermind's noisy. Body mind is absolute. Whether we act on what we know from the body mind, that's a different choice. That's a different choice entirely. Which brings me to the practice. Start to track what those no-brainer moments are like for you. Start small, start easy, right? Do the chocolate, vanilla, Coke, Pepsi, this movie, that movie, go for a walk or read a book. Just really start to track how that works for you, what your body mind is like. So you recollect, remember this innate ability you already have. Yes? Now, when you have that piece pretty well said, so you know what your, how your body mind reveals itself, and it can be anything. I've known people and clients who they hear a voice. I once knew someone who'd get this big neon sign image. Sometimes it's as simple as a whisper. Sometimes it's psst. For me, the sensation tends to be from the last moment to this moment I've been downloaded into. There's just, okay, I get it. That's how my body mind communicates with me. The piece is to track how yours communicates with you. And once you have the no-brainers down, then start to overlay that onto choices. One of the ways I always like to do it is I walk a lot. I'm in New York City, in the heart of, and I walk a lot in the city. And sometimes what I do is I'll just come to a corner and say, okay, which way? Which way? And I let my body mind guide me. When you get that piece, so you're fluent in it, or more fluent than you are now, then you can start to overlay it on bigger decisions. Now, I'm not for a minute saying chocolate and vanilla equates with, do I leave this relationship? Do I quit my job? Do I move? And yet, making the choices that bring you to that ultimate choice go through the same process. What's the deep knowing? What's the quiet peace? This way, this step that leads me to this step, that leads me to this step, that leads me to this step. When we are willing to listen with our body minds, rather than listening to our chatter minds, choices in life can be a lot less daunting, a lot less textured, not necessarily easy, just clearer. Bodymind Listening 101. Now, what I want to do is just quickly answer a few questions that have come in. Thank you all for coming, by the way. Let's see. Reintegration, yes. There's cooking on gas, right? When we don't listen and follow our inner guidance, we end up having to deal with the mess, indeed. I feel like it's a sensation down in my gut or lower abdominals. Great. Now, let me build on that, because someone asked me recently, do I have to call it the body mind? I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, isn't that intuition or gut instinct or fine? If that's what speaks to you and the way it speaks to you, go for it. Go for it. I call it the body mind on purpose as a reminder to myself and others and clients that it's one piece. I bring it back to its natural state. But whatever works for you, that's all that matters. One more question. One more question that somebody asked me. What's the big takeaway tip? What would be the one tip that you would say is that everybody can use across the board? And my takeaway would be listen for and to the whispers, that quiet knowing, that absolute. It's absolute. It's absolute. And parse the difference between blah, 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 fuss, 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 and blah, 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 chattermind, chattermind. And we get into trouble when we listen to the chattermind rather than listening with the body mind. So, Bodymind Listening 101. If you have questions I didn't get to, please post them below, and I'll respond to them. Thank you for taking the time to join me, to ask the questions, to listen. And until next time, cheers.